I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Far-right and pro-gun Charlie Kirk was unalived, ironically, by at one of his events in Utah Valley University. While far-right and bad-faith Republicans have been quick to enthusiastically blame leftists, not even hours after it occurred.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to and the world's worst mass criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the that we're seeing in our country today. Radical left political has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
Neuter Democrats in unison put out a copy and paste statement placating the far-right Republicans, as they have done many times in the past, about how political has no place in America. This even though America is one of the biggest perpetrators of political around the world in developing countries, and the fact that Charlie Kirk himself utilized a form of political stochastic as his predecessors who shaped the talking points he regurgitated did. Charlie Kirk was a white defender, a Palestinian denier, a Christian, a pro-peddler, an American exceptionalist, a grifter, a propagandist, an anti-intellectual, and much more. Kirk offered no new ideas, no new talking points, and more importantly, no intellectualism. He was a filmmaker and commentator Tariq Nasheed was 100% on the money when he said that Kirk offered no intellectual contributions. Very much like your typical American or Western conservative, Kirk was a massive hypocrite to the highest order. For example, Kirk's facade as a fake Christian was very apparent when he complained about babies being aborted, even ranting about dehumanizing language.
We are allowing babies every single year to just say, you know, we're going to discard them. Why? Oh, they're smaller. They're not humans. You're using dehumanizing language, saying, oh, it's an embryo. No, that's a baby made in the image of God, deserving of protection.
And yet, he dehumanized, demonized, and or dismissed of a lot of oppressed and marginalized groups. This is how Kirk amassed his fortune. Kirk's net worth is an estimated $12 million, not counting at least 3 homes, 2 of which are a $4.5 million estate, and an $855,000 oceanfront condo in Florida. He accumulated that financial wealth as a debate rehashing old talking points from his predecessors, dehumanizing and demonizing many oppressed and marginalized groups, both within the US and globally. Charlie Kirk, the often debunked 1350 lie that black people comprised 13% of the total US population but accounted for 50% of total in the US. He said MLK was awful, he's not a good person. As a fake Christian, he also we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the mid-1960s.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true.
He falsely claimed that black people attacked whites at 3 times the rate that whites committed crimes against black people. He clumsily argued that black women received high positions in US society not through intellect or accomplishments, but by stealing a white person's slot.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks. We would have been called racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
Like, I'm sorry,
If I see a black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
That white was a lie, argued reverse racism existed, and that whites were not the perpetrators of systemic racism, but were instead comically the victims of it. He obsessively brought up George Floyd's name after Floyd was murdered and called him a. He attributed harm being caused to the black community not by law enforcement's many ills or America's systemic and societal racism against black people, but because of Black Lives Matter. To these far-right, the issue wasn't the it was you calling them out on their that was the bigger offense. He said black people were better in the 1940s in part because they committed less crimes, and that black America is worse than it has been in 80 years during Jim Crow.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but
racial permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been
that affected
in the last 80 years.
The generational psyche of an entire group of people?
Well, I'm sure.
Charlie Kirk also dehumanized Muslims and demonized both Islam and Muslims often, which was ironic for many reasons. Firstly, he constantly cried about how Muslims were enveloping or conquering the West. Even though pseudo-Christian like Kirk have infested not just the Western world, but every corner of the globe through colonialist and imperialist. They also believed in manifest destiny, a fake Christian belief rooted in ideology that claimed that all of the U.S. belonged not to the Native Americans, nor the Mexicans who've lived on the land for generations like their ancestors had done previously, but that the land belonged to the whites. Secondly, pushing his he belched that the left was using Islam to bring down America, that Islam is the sword the left is using of America. Even though as a fake Christian, he supported far-right policies, including those from the Trump regime that brought down America from within. There's a reason why numerous Israeli figures and organizations promptly tweeted about Kirk expiring. As an evangelical, Kirk frequently pushed Zionist and Israeli
The overuse of the word because when you keep on using you're basically trying to cheapen actual that have happened the last 100 years. What? It is an intentional provocation, and I find it to be repulsive.
That's not okay for what Israel is doing to the Palestinians.
What is Israel doing exactly? Tell me in detail. Where's it's really how?
What do you mean how? They're kids, man.
Well, hold on. Kids, you mean wait, they drop leaflets before they in Gaza. They warn civilian corridors before they ever engage militarily. They do emergency medical procedures for any person in Gaza that might need it. Do you understand what's actually? It's called war, okay? And in war, sometimes bad things happen. It's not called Palestine.
You don't believe that Palestine have the right to exist?
No, everyone has a right to exist. Show me where it is. It's a non-existent place. I don't think the place exists.
What?
Because it doesn't. It's called Judea and Samaria.
He justified Israel's nature as a fake Christian, bellowing Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction.
And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction.
He claimed the of Palestinian women and children were the fault of not Israel, likening the of Japanese people and the on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to the fault of Japan, not the US. He also outright lied and claimed that Israel was not intentionally Palestinians, even though there's a treasure trove of evidence that it has done so plenty of times and for decades.
And this weekend, there was an all-out propaganda campaign trying to make it seem as if Israel is intentionally people of Gaza. I hate being lied to.
He claimed that it was the Israeli people who lived without freedom, not the Palestinian people who had been subjected to Israeli colonialism, discrimination from their homes, etc. for over 71 years up to that point. Kirk grunted that trans women...
Yeah, my next claim is that trans...
As a fake Christian, he pushed that not capitalism, nor the military-industrial complex, nor colonialism or imperialism but that transgender people are the one thing that is so against our senses, so against natural law, and a middle finger to God, as the heathens in church clapped in agreement.
The one issue I think that is so against our senses, so against the natural law, and dare I say, a throbbing middle finger to God, is the transgender thing happening in America right now. We are in a church, and so it's important to remember Deuteronomy 22:5, a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. You hear that, William Thomas? You're an abomination to God.
He called the Trevor Project an organization established to prevent and fight thoughts and actions among young LGBTQ plus people a racket, and disgustingly celebrated the federal prevention hotlines cutting ties with the Trevor Project and ending the provision of specialized support to LGBTQ plus callers. He singled out Robin Westman to further push hate against trans people. He also applauded Fox News' Jesse Waters for pulling the trans people are lie, rich coming from warhawks at Fox News. As a stereotypical evangelical, Kirk was staunchly pro-Israel and anti-Jewish, even bemoaning tired anti-Jewish nonsense. He reached into historic of dual loyalty, clannishness, and having distorted morals, ethics, and values when he blamed for donating to universities where students protested Israel and Israel's against the Palestinian people. He referenced even more like when he stated the number one funding mechanism of radical open border neoliberal quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits.
And in a stunning turn of events, the people that the ADL said are actually the biggest defenders of Judaism in Israel right now in the country. Us, conservative evangelical Christians. They have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because have been the number one funding mechanism of radical open border neoliberal quasi-Marxist policies. And it's not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it.
There are two patterns with conservatives like Kirk. One, they are the perpetual victims. They always blame other religions or groups of people based on race, ethnicity, nationality, etc. Black people, Islam/Muslims, Palestinians, trans people, Jews, Latinos, immigrants, and so on and so forth. And two, they used similar demonizing language for policies they oppose. When it came to policies he didn't like, he labeled them a beast, like the Civil Rights Act, immigration, and fighting intolerance.
Yeah, and the Civil Rights Act, though, let's be clear, created a beast, and that beast has now turned into weapon. Yeah, and that's the reality. Cultural institutions and nonprofits. This is a beast created by
He also said Jews are the drivers of.
Again, it's double negatives and misuse of the word disinterested. It's a strange tweet that Elon pinpointed on here. But the first part is absolutely true. Let's go to this. Have been pushing the exact kind of that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing, anti-white causes have been Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL, it was some of the top organizations in the country that have done that. And Tucker Carlson mentions that have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us. We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, that the philosophical foundation of has been largely financed by country. Play cut 92.
However, then I thought, well, wait a second. If the biggest donors at, say, Harvard have decided, well, we're going to shut it down now, where were you the last 10 years? And that's you were allowing this. And then I found myself really hating those people, actually. That you're okay with that? On what grounds were you okay with that?
And this is what I've been trying to explain to the pro-Israel lobby, that what you were seeing as lack of support is people that are asking the question is, where were you as we have endured all of this?
You were paying for it, actually.
Right.
You were paying for it.
You were paying for it.
Because you were calling my children immoral for their You paid for that. And so why shouldn't I be mad at you? I don't understand.
So what Tucker is saying is similar to part of the tweet that Elon isolated. That is true. That, let's just say liberals, but that includes financiers of liberal causes, didn't really care about University of Chicago having courses that saying, they didn't really care about American Express saying that we must. They didn't, in fact, they were supportive of it. A lot of liberals were okay with critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion. ADL went all in on the BLM type narrative, and ADL is one of many different organizations that were perfectly fine with the growing wave.
He also claimed that mothers aborting their pregnancies was much worse than the Holocaust.
Number 3, it is never right to justify the under the guise of saying they're unwanted. That's how we get Auschwitz. That's how we get the greatest horrors of the 20th century. Those people are unwanted.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
It's really not. I don't
it's
think
45 million babies. It's nearly 8 times worse than the Holocaust. What's the moral difference between a small baby in the womb and a grown Jew who was killed at Auschwitz? What's the moral difference? One is older.
Is a person?
Charlie Kirk was a terrible individual who does not deserve to be humanized because he made his multi-million-dollar fortune dehumanizing and demonizing many oppressed and marginalized groups. There's a lot more that I wanted to include, like his dehumanization and demonization of Latinos and immigrants, and him saying other wild things, but he said and did so many vile things while alive that this video is 2 times larger than I intended it to be. Please like, comment, and subscribe. He used a lot more dehumanizing and demonizing language against a multitude of oppressed and marginalized groups, but I didn't want the video to be too long for the viewer. So if you have some of his quotes or arguments, add them in the comment section and we'll talk about it.
What does fetus mean in Latin?
What the f***? I'm sorry, is this
It means little human being.
Ooh, his smile is very creepy. Okay,
Smiling is creepy?
no, your smile specifically.
Got it.
But let's go back.